A few years ago, I made a decision that led me into an unbelievably terrifying situation. It's something I can only describe as downright idiotic. One that landed me with someone who, in my estimation, might be a serial killer or something worse. I was 18 at the time, just fresh out of high school, and this happened about 3 years ago. My life was under the thumb of an extremely overprotective and emotionally abusive father. He wouldn't let me have friends or any semblance of privacy. My only escape was a phone he got for me, just about a month before everything went down. I'd sneak onto Tinder to connect with people. A breath of fresh air in my isolated life. One guy, let's call him Alex for now, a 28-year-old, caught my attention. Looking back, it was creepy how an older man was so eager to talk to someone my age, but back then, it boosted my confidence. Alex suggested I move in with him, citing that legally, I wasn't bound by my father anymore. It excited and terrified me. We agreed to meet that night at midnight, with the condition that I'd be back home by 4 a.m. to ensure my dad didn't hear anything. I asked Alex to park away from the house and text me when he arrived. So, at midnight, he texted. I sneaked out and started walking down the driveway, but as I got closer, I heard whispers. It seemed like Alex was on the phone, talking but receiving no response. Curiosity got the best of me, and I'm grateful it did. What I overheard shook me to my core. Alex was planning something sickening, bragging about raping me and keeping me alive for as long as possible. I panicked but managed to slip away and hide in the woods, evading a potentially deadly encounter. He bombarded my phone with calls and texts. Furious that I had figured him out, his threatening messages terrified me, especially when he mentioned knowing where I lived. Terrified, I blocked him everywhere and confided in my grandmother, who rescued me from my father's abusive household. Since then, life's been about healing and moving forward, but the police couldn't act without proof, leaving me haunted by the fear that Alex might still be out there, hurting others. It's a chapter I'm glad to have left behind, working now on creating a better, safer life. I got onto Tinder out of sheer boredom and a sense of loneliness. Just last year, when things were finally settling down after the whole pandemic situation, I'd used the app before and met some decent people. Nothing extraordinary, you know. But then came this one encounter that made me swear off dating apps forever. Her name was Haley, a blonde girl who seemed alright initially. Enough for me to agree to meet her. She appeared cute, and I was craving a genuine connection. But things took a wild turn. We hit it off, planning to meet, but she was adamant about coming over to my place. I hesitated because my place was a mess, and I preferred a public setting, but she insisted. Looking back, that insistence should have raised red flags. But I was too caught up in her looks and my own loneliness to see it clearly. So, she arrived, and immediately, something seemed off. She didn't quite match her Tinder photos, but I brushed it off, not wanting to offend. We chatted, and she asked for a drink. I opted for a beer, but she'd already prepared a mixed drink for me. I wasn't keen on hard liquor, so I delayed drinking it, much to her persistence. After a few beers, I relented and took a sip. Paranoia crept in, suspecting she might have tampered with it while I was in the restroom. But as I got drunker, I dismissed my doubts. Then, things went dark. I woke up hours later, in excruciating pain, bruises all over, stab wounds on my arms and stomach, blood everywhere, my phone, TVs, jewelry, and a considerable sum of money were gone. The house was trashed, vandalized, and she was nowhere in sight. Shocked, in pain, and terrified, I realized I'd been drugged and robbed. The horror amplified when I found a pentagram drawn on the wall with my blood. I managed to call for help, but by the time the cops arrived, the trail was cold. I've since moved. Fortified my new place with security cameras and alarms, the fear still lingers. But I'm gradually reclaiming safety and sanity. If there's one lesson from this nightmare, it's to stay cautious and vigilant, no matter how lonely or alluring the situation might seem. Back in college, I entertained the thought of trying dating apps like Bumble and Tinder, just to shake off some boredom and meet new people. One day, I stumbled upon Claire, someone I recognized from high school. We hadn't spoken much back then. Despite sharing mutual friends, it was odd how little we knew each other, given our small school. Our chat took an unexpected turn. When she swiftly invited me to hang out that night, it struck me as peculiar, especially for a late-night rendezvous, but I didn't want to pass up the chance. Claire wanted me to bring weed, though I didn't indulge. So I got some, hoping it'd be satisfactory. Looking back, I should have been more cautious and let someone know where I was going. Nerves and excitement clouded my judgment, envisioning an adventurous night, but as I got closer to the address she gave, a weird feeling crept in. The neighborhood was run down, and her house looked abandoned, sending shivers down my spine. Despite my instincts screaming otherwise, I decided to give it a shot, foolishly hoping it wasn't a setup. After a brief retreat, Claire messaged, insisting I return. Reluctantly, I went back, asking her to come outside when I arrived. Ignoring the warning signs, I entered the eerie house. Finding it in disarray, music blared, adding to the unsettling atmosphere. Following the music upstairs, I called out to Claire, but as I approached, the music stopped and fear consumed me. Suddenly, a guy in gothic attire emerged, confirming it was a setup. Panicked, I fled upstairs, locked myself in the bathroom, and prepared for the worst with a toothbrush as my makeshift defense. Realizing the danger, I spotted a small window, my only escape. I squeezed through onto the roof, nearly slipping, but luck was on my side. Spotting a trampoline, I jumped, sprinted to my car, and drove off in a frenzy. I contacted the police, who later informed me of the horrifying truth. The house was a cover for a group luring victims off dating apps. Posing as a pretty girl, the place harbored bodies and evidence of sinister acts. The police caught some suspects, but are still searching for others, known as Holy Eternity. It was a chilling reminder of human depravity. That night nearly ended in tragedy, and since then, I've sworn off dating apps for good. I embarked on a week-long hunting trip, holed up in my uncle's cabin smack in the dead of winter. After a long day, readying to head back, light snow turned into a blizzard out of nowhere. The storm worsened by the minute, making the walk back to the cabin seem daunting. Just when panic set in, a distant light appeared, barely visible through the thick snowfall. As I trudged closer, relief washed over me. It was another cabin. Adrenaline surged. It was a potential sanctuary. The blizzard made returning to my uncle's cabin a near impossible feat. Fearing getting lost, I approached the unfamiliar cabin. Hoping luck favored me, there lingered a fear: what if the inhabitant turned out to be dangerous? Yet, the allure of shelter outweighed the risk. Knocking on the door, I heard approaching footsteps. Politely, I explained my predicament to the man who answered. Surprisingly, he welcomed me in for the night, though something about him felt off. He was reserved, hardly engaging in conversation. Grateful yet uneasy, I settled on his couch. Attempting small talk failed, and not wanting to intrude, I prepared to rest. As I lay down, the man lingered behind me, unnervingly silent. He turned off the cabin's last light, and though I expected him to retire, he remained unseen. Anxiety crept in, but I convinced myself it was nothing. Attempting to sleep, suddenly, I jolted awake to find him atop me. Panic surged as he restrained and invaded my space. In a frantic struggle, I managed to break free momentarily, seizing the opportunity to escape. Rushing for the door, I realized I couldn't abandon my gun. Retrieving it, I faced him wielding my own weapon. Swift action and luck were on my side as I disarmed him and fled into the relentless snowstorm. Lost for hours in the blinding snow, I finally stumbled upon my cabin, later learning the chilling truth from the police that cabin's owner had vanished years ago, leaving it abandoned. The realization that the man intended to kill me sent shivers down my spine. The scariest part, they hadn't caught him yet. 2 winters ago, my dad surprised me with a car for my birthday. My very first one, but the snowstorm that hit on the same day practically trapped the car at home. I felt bummed about not being able to take it for a spin, but was grateful nonetheless. That night, contemplating a joyride, I almost caved in, but knew it was a reckless idea given the terrible road conditions and my dad's stern warnings. The next night, my friend Eric, dealing with his dad's abusive behavior, begged for help. Unable to leave him alone, I snuck out to pick him up. Driving through the heavy snow, I encountered an old man in the road, barely visible. Attempting to avoid him, I lost control, crashing into a ditch. Panicked, I worried about facing my dad's wrath. The man, unnerving from the start, approached and asked if I was okay. Eager to leave, I asked him to go away, and he eventually did, heading in the opposite direction. Realizing I'd lost my phone in the chaos, I dashed home, fearing my dad's reaction. He rescued the car but confiscated the keys. Promising to talk the next day, I felt terrible, seeing my dad so upset. That night, unable to find my phone, I heard strange noises outside, brushing it off as an animal. I ignored it until a knock on my window made me sprint to get my dad. Returning to my room, the window was wide open and my phone lay on my bed. It hit me that the man from the crash must have followed me home. Taking my phone and sneaking in, we searched but found no trace. A week later, he reappeared in our backyard, vanishing before we could confront him. I'm still baffled by his motives. I haven't seen him since. But the memory lingers, a lesson learned about trust and caution that night. An unsettling reminder even after 2 years. Just a few years back, I found myself on a long work-related road trip, a routine familiar from my previous job. Recent events had led to a change in employment, prompting this solitary drive on treacherous roads I wouldn't have ventured on otherwise. As the snowfall intensified and night deepened, I spotted a nearby hotel and decided to halt for the night, hoping for better road conditions by morning. Arriving, I secured a room, torn between exhaustion from driving and the need to shake off the stiffness from hours behind the wheel. After a quick meal, I felt the urge to stretch and opted for a swim in the hotel's indoor pool and hot tub, finding solace in the serene setting. However, my relaxation was disrupted when I noticed a man in a dimly lit corner at the pool, unnerving me with his lingering stares and elusive presence. Feeling uneasy, I cut my swim short, returning to my room and changing into dry clothes before heading to the lobby for refreshments. Settling in for the night, I was interrupted by noises seemingly originating from outside my room, gradually growing louder, echoing from within the bathroom. Panic set in as I grappled with the situation, trying to rationalize what could be causing the commotion. Slowly opening the bathroom door, my worst fears materialized. The same unsettling man from the pool was inside. Shocked and horrified, I attempted to shut the door, but he easily overpowered me, forcing his way in. In a chilling turn of events, he made inappropriate advances. Disregarding my resistance, summoning every ounce of strength, I fought back, biting his arm to break free from his grasp. His retaliation with a slap didn't deter me. I sprinted for the door, escaping to the lobby and recounting the harrowing encounter to the front desk worker. The swift action of the hotel staff led to his arrest. CCTV footage captured his intrusion into my room while I fetched snacks. Discovering he was a hotel employee amplified the shock. Despite the trauma, I was grateful the situation didn't escalate further.